What is the average airspeed velocity of a swallow?
Yeah, no idea.
Oh,
7 miles an hour.
that's 7. 7 is correct.
Yep, BS.
7 coconut lengths per cubic Coca-Cola bottle.
Okay, well, that's that's good. Write that down in your science books, kids.
That was not only a puzzle, but also puzzling. We're talking about puzzles today.
Ah, there we go. Yes.
Yeah. Cryptics,
Makes much more sense now.
cryptography, ciphers,
Jeez. Okay,
other big words.
let's do it.
So, what is a puzzle? I'm going to ask you that question.
Trying to figure out what we're going to talk about today. That's the puzzle.
Yeah, that is a puzzle. If you were to give me like a Guff definition of a puzzle, what would you say a puzzle is?
Yeah, taking concepts, sticking them together to make them work. I mean, taking something, like whether it's a physical or taking a bunch of clues from a crime scene. There's blood here, there's a shoe print here, there's a dog barking over here, and then putting it together to make an answer. Or a picture is in front of you, like as a physical picture.
Oh, like a jigsaw.
A puzzle, yeah.
Okay. So, suffice to say, it's many pieces that when you zoom out and look at them together, they form a cohesive thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you just said it nicer than I did.
Oh,
You
yeah.
asked for the Guff version. You didn't ask for the smart
that's what
version.
that's what we're here for,
You
right?
didn't ask for the smart version.
The smart version, yeah.
You asked for the nonsense version.
So, I guess today we're going to talk about puzzles in respect to how they're kind of used in like role-playing games,
Right.
And then kind of how they like are used in video games.
Yep.
And maybe if we have time, we'll talk about like puzzle boxes or something.
Sure.
Just random.
Yeah, anything to do with
solution things.
puzzles. Yeah,
anything to do
let's
with
do it.
puzzles. So, you talked about let's just start with jigsaw puzzles. I feel like that's a fun place to start. Everyone kind of likes them.
I think we're exposed to those. This is one of the first things we're exposed to as kids.
Yeah, and it's
How to put pieces together.
and it's funny too because like the process by which you can solve a jigsaw puzzle is there's so many ways to do it.
Yeah.
Like fundamentally, like you're
Don't
just
be a
putting
monster.
you're just putting pieces together, right?
Yeah.
Like that is the solution, right? But how you put those pieces together is the interesting part. So,
Yep.
I mean, technically you could put them all in a giant garbage bag and shake it up and dump it out, and you just do that as many times until you get the right picture, right?
Oh, man. Yeah, that's how that works.
That's
Yep.
a valid solution.
That is.
Or, you could start looking at the colors and putting the colors together and separating them out. There's so many ways
Start
to
in the middle,
Just start in the middle, yeah.
Just work
Hide,
your way out.
hide half the corner pieces.
Yeah, because people love that.
To just watch the world burn. So, yeah, like that's jigsaw puzzles,
Yep.
right? And so it's this idea that I think this is going to be like one of the fundamental core principles to puzzles.
Yep.
And what makes a good puzzle is that there is multiple ways to solve it, or
Yep.
multiple ways to approach solving it.
Yeah, you go back to the really like the little kid puzzle, and it's 9 pieces. You have one centerpiece, and then 8 pieces with edges. Like that's as basic as it gets.
So, have you seen the video of like the baby toy where like they put
yes.
where they put the
Yes.
cylinder in,
Yes.
and the triangle.
The poor lady in that video just
And
dying.
the lady is watching it, and it's all right. Where does the circle piece go? And just like the circle hole, and the guy's like, "That's right, in the
Yes.
square hole."
What? No.
And all the pieces fit in the square hole.
So dumb. I think about it now, and it's probably so true.
and,
Like I want to go back and get mine.
and this is hilarious because this is that's a puzzle,
Yeah.
right?
That's an answer to a puzzle.
That is
too.
a valid solution to getting all the pieces in the box.
Yeah.
Now, are you going about it the correct or intended way? Probably not.
No, probably not. No.
And that's the interesting thing about puzzles is that puzzle has multiple solutions.
Yep.
Where the jigsaw puzzle, there is one solution. There's one picture that appears and matches the box.
Yep.
This is another thing that's going to end up coming back to haunt us, I guess, or being a common theme.
Right.
In making good puzzles is like sometimes the one solution is actually the good puzzle because otherwise you have this weird like did I actually solve the puzzle by putting all the pieces in
Yeah.
the square hole, we're talking about very abstract things here, so let's maybe get a little more concrete. So you've played lots of tabletop RPGs.
Yeah.
Dungeon Masters kind of like their puzzles, but have you ever come across any puzzles that you found compelling or interesting in like tabletop RPGs?
Yes, actually, there's a whole module full of them, and some of the puzzles in there are very clever. It's the what is it originally called? I'll call it Tome of Annihilation.
Oh, Tomb of Horrors.
Tomb of Horrors. Yes,
Yep.
I couldn't remember the original name. That is essentially a module full of like 40 puzzles, if not more. I don't know.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding of the history of that was players would come up to Gary Gygax and be like, "We're so tough, we can fight anything. We know how to kill a Tarrasque."
Right.
And he's like, "Okay, run this dungeon," and there's just nothing to fight.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
Essentially, it's just a murder dungeon.
Just traps and
Yeah.
It was like, how do you defeat the fighter? Well, you make him use his brain.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I know, exactly. But it had really super creative puzzles in it. Like, whether it was the Indiana Jones style where the tiles on the floor had to match certain, you had to step on certain tiles.
letters or whatever.
Yeah, or whatever the hieroglyphics or whatever the symbol was.
Yep.
And that was pretty cool. Or the mirrors or, the acid trap or the sliding ramp. You got to figure out how to get through that without, triggering stuff and dying.
Yep. One of the interesting things about that module specifically, because I've run the module several times for like what the heck was it, extra life or something like that, I think was but basically just for events.
Yep.
Different events. And one of the interesting things to me about that module is I would argue that it's kind of not a good puzzle in a way.
Right.
It's memorable, but it's not designed to be like to give you like a chance.
Right. No.
Because there is no way to actually figure things out other than by like doing it wrong.
Yeah, no, right.
Now, granted, like you could maybe read into the descriptions and try to think a 3D image in your head and all this and that. But like at the end of the day, it's like it's so difficult to like know which door to even walk in.
Right. Yep. No, that's for sure. It's an interesting. Yeah, but I mean that to me that's the first puzzles I think of. I mean, was the Tome of Annihilation, and not all of them are puzzles. Some are just flat out traps.
Yep.
Lots of puzzles, lots of puzzles in tabletop RPGs are trap associated puzzles.
Yeah, it's like
It's kind of the standard.
And it's funny because it kind of creates a paranoia and almost like a want to not interact with puzzles for players too.
Yes,
'Cause
unfortunately.
you'll walk in and they'll be like, they'll see the book on the lectern and they'll be like, yeah, I'm not going to do anything with that. You're like, but this is like,
It's glowing. It wants you to read it.
it's the magic book of
Too
like,
bad.
and it's like, they're like, yeah, the ceiling's probably going to drop. You're like, there's nothing in this room to
Yeah.
trick you. And they're like, no. And then they just walk away.
The ceiling's reinforced. The book is flying towards you to read it. No, I'm leaving. Lock the door. Burn it. Like, no, it's not a trap.
Yeah. And
No,
it's-
that's true.
yeah. And that just emerges out of things like that.
Yep.
But again, are they puzzles? Hard to tell. And this is kind of a meta thing, right?
Right.
Like we're talking about. I kind of want to discuss like what is a good puzzle, and a good puzzle is something that you can look at all the pieces
Yep.
and solve without failing it,
Right.
right? Like
Yep.
like there's clear steps to take to get to the end,
Right.
and it's not just like, well, you didn't figure this part out, so guess you're never gonna learn it,
Yep.
or something like that.
It's funny you bring that up because I'm actually next year next summer, beginning of summer, I'm going to run a campaign. I'm gonna test it out sometime at the end of this year, beginning of next too, also. But it's literally gonna be a village that's just a giant puzzle,
Cool.
and it's for my grandson initially. Well, it was initially so I could make a starter module that I think everybody could have fun in, that didn't require combat if they didn't want to. Like it's going to be completely up to the players. If the players want to have combat, they can. There's some minimal combat, and then it's generally just a whole village of puzzle. Everything in the village will have a part of the puzzle.
Nice.
There's going to be 58 villagers. Every one of the villagers is a piece of the puzzle, some way, somehow. Now, you can find ways to delay your solving of the puzzle by doing stuff. But then ultimately the goal is to solve the puzzle. But it was geared towards any player from the age of like 10 to 110, you know?
Yeah.
And that was kind of the goal of the whole module, is going to be a puzzle. But
So let's talk about like designing puzzles then, because as two DMs, like this is something that comes up, right?
oh, it comes up all the time. Yeah.
And I guess a little anecdote I have for puzzles is, and I'm sure people have heard something very similar to this, is that time you made a puzzle and the party just wasn't able to solve it, and so you're just like, have someone make an insight check, I guess, and then they fail it, and you're like, well, and they're all just kind of sitting around the table,
Right.
awkwardly, and you're like, apparently I made the puzzle too hard, like, and it's not that like you made it too hard, it's just like it's one of those things, like you're on the spot, you're trying to come up with a solution, you can't come up. It's not that like it's too hard, whatever.
Right.
It's just it's not vibing with the current thing.
Yeah, well, sometimes the narrative isn't doing well, whether it's the players not being interactive or the DM not sure how to get the players to interact.
Yeah.
Sometimes usually it's a narrative issue.
Yeah, and even then, like, still though, like, if it's just like the puzzle stumping, I was like, at what point do you just like, oh well, I guess here's the solution, and then you move on with it.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And it's like, I found that early on when I was trying to put puzzles into games, designing the puzzles for the players was the right way to go.
Right.
Like if I knew someone in the party,
Gamer Bob.
Gamer Bob, for some reason knew like how to do binary or something like that, like how to do binary numbers, I could integrate that into the puzzle. Now he has to help solve the puzzle.
Right. We're giving Gamer Joe a day off, by the way.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be Gamer Bob today.
So that's what I started doing. Is I started like I knew someone liked Greek mythology or something. I could incorporate that into the puzzle.
Good idea. Yeah.
And man, did that improve puzzles a lot more. And then I found simple, like just a few steps for the puzzles is usually the way to go.
Right.
For me.
Absolutely.
How it worked out for me.
Absolutely. My personal preference. I'm not trying to cut you off. Sorry. My personal preference for a puzzle is the small puzzles. I like those, but on a large scale, every small puzzle you solve helps solve the big puzzle that they don't even necessarily know what's going on until towards the end. They're like, "Oh crap! Oh my gosh! Now we got to go in farther. This is just wow."
Yeah, it's the aha moment, right? The eureka moment. That's why like there's a game called The Room, and it's just basically a virtual puzzle box. Right?
So players out there, if you haven't played The Room, you're doing yourself a disjustice. And pay for it. It's fine.
The reason why I'm like bringing this up is for the puzzle box aspect.
Yeah.
Because a puzzle box is a series of small puzzles that, when you put them together, become pieces in a larger puzzle.
Yep.
And it's like this idea that like you can zoom in and like it just puzzles all the way down.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And that weaving stories that way is really cool. It's this idea of like compartmentalizing and breaking things down.
Right.
And then all of a sudden they sum up to something larger than what they were. And that's just cool design, in my opinion. So we've talked a little bit about puzzles, what makes a good puzzle, using them in the context of like tabletop RPGs and stuff. But this is kind of generally applicable to puzzles.
Right.
Just all puzzles, I guess. Let's talk a little bit about linear puzzles versus like a non-linear puzzle.
Okay.
So linear puzzle would be like you complete step A, can go on to step B, can go on to step C, and you solve all of these little pieces like we were talking about in a sequence, a predetermined
step one,
sequence.
Step 2, step.
Where a non-linear is like, and you can have this on some puzzle boxes as well. It's like you might get stumped on this part of the puzzle. Well, then you go and you work on another part of the puzzle. Like maybe this problem is more important to work on. And this is one of the interesting things that I find about like factory games or other certain games that have a lot of systems.
Right.
Where you're like trying to achieve a goal, but you're like, no, you have this problem over here.
Right.
Like this bottleneck of parts flowing, or like you're missing this resource or something. And you know, maybe in like survival crafting, it kind of appears too.
Right.
Or even like some role-playing games and stuff like that, where like you need this item, or MMOs or something. And so is that like a nonlinear puzzle in a way then? Because you're trying to get these pieces of something
Right.
to solve it. And granted, like it doesn't require. Does a puzzle require problem solving?
I don't.
Is a fetch quest, could that be part of a puzzle? Right.
I think it can, because I think Skyrim does that okay. You get, part of their problem solving, their puzzles are you go in and you have like the turning of the stones, and one side is a fish, the other side's a lion, a bird, whatever, and you have 4 stones you have to line up in a certain order. But to do that, you just got to solve other quests, and they tell you how to do it. That's part of the puzzle. It's just even though you don't know it's a puzzle. Well, when you get up to the door, it's a puzzle. You didn't realize the last 3 quests were part of that puzzle, though.
Funny you mentioned that, because you can like, there's a one solution to that, right? And you can, like you said, go around and find all the pieces, and then like, oh, boom, I know the solution. But also, you can kind of just put everything through the square hole in that too.
Oh yeah,
you can brute force it if you have enough health to live through the traps.
Yep.
You can just spin it until you get the right combination.
Yeah, until you get the right combination for sure.
So like that, to me, that's good design. You can do it both ways.
I like having puzzles that are solved multiple ways.
Yeah, and like I like I like the idea of that one clear solution, right? The solution where you're not punished for trying to solve it,
right?
Because you learn all the pieces. Okay, now I can do it. Boom, I'm 100% sure this is the way to do it. And then you're rewarded, right? And that like endorphin rush of like getting that right is so good.
Right.
You're like, I'm a genius, But then also you could just be like, nah, I'm just gonna drink a bunch of health potions and just chaotically turn things until I get the right.
Yeah, it's like there's a lock on the door. Okay, thief, get up here and unlock the door. Thief's up there trying to unlock the door. He fails a couple times. Barbarian kicks the door open. Okay, let's go in.
It's like,
puzzle solved. I just booted the door down. Like sometimes it's kind of cool just to be able to boot the door down.
Yeah, sometimes just putting the block through the square hole is the
it's
right
like,
solution.
okay, that worked. It's fine. Mission accomplished. It was a really cool puzzle lock, but no, Barbarian just kicked it. All right.
And that's an interesting like design thing too, is like if you're designing a puzzle for like players in a tabletop RPG, give them a solution that is just maybe like the screw it, we're gonna kick the door down solution.
I actually had that in my the Chult one, whatever that was called. Was that Tomb of Annihilation?
That was Tomb of Annihilation.
Yeah, so this had nothing to do with the tomb itself. They were out and they hit some other temple thing. And in the temple, there's these blocks you have to stand on. So the next person goes down the next block and blah, blah, blah. I believe that was the module. And at the time, it was getting confusing for everybody. Like, what Barbarian's like, I'm just going to kick. I'm going to ram the wall with like something like a log or something, break through. Like reading through. Nothing says you couldn't do it.
Yeah.
Okay, so you set up a trap and you kill the kobold in the background. Okay, well, I mean, sure, puzzle solved. But it was an obvious solution to everybody to step on these blocks, because that's pretty much you stepped anywhere else, things ignite on fire.
Yeah.
Barbarian's like, I'm just gonna run really fast and run into it with a big giant log.
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, there's nothing that says it wouldn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, problem solved.
And so I think that's where the cool thing emerges in. Let's just talk about like games. I don't want to say puzzle games.
Right.
Like,
there are a lot of puzzle games.
There's a lot of puzzle games, but there's also just a lot of games that have like problem solving.
Yep.
And puzzles, quote unquote, in them. Because ultimately, a puzzle is just problem solving.
Yep.
Right. It just might require a bunch of steps.
Right.
So I have like a bunch of small problems. And yeah, we talked a little bit like the factory games where like it's all these complicated systems where like you have to figure out how to make this part, and the complexity gets even more intense, and then you have to figure out how to ship all the parts and all this and that. A lot of those factory games play like that. There's also Zachtronics games. I don't know if you've ever heard of them. Stuff like Shenzhen IO, Opus Magnum, Space Chem. Basically, they're kind of like programming games in a way.
Okay.
Where like you're using logic and like systems to solve problems.
Okay.
And so like they kind of fit in the puzzle game category. The other one, Hacknet. I think we've
yep.
talked about that.
Yep.
Where that's a puzzle game,
Right.
Ultimately,
Right.
Where you're just trying to like simulate hacking a network and stuff like that.
Yeah. No, that's exactly what that is. Yeah.
And like, would you call them puzzle games, or would you call them games with puzzle elements?
I would say they're puzzle games.
Yeah.
I think because there's really like, yeah, I mean, there may be a story to it and maybe all this other stuff, but ultimately you're just solving a bunch of puzzles to get from point A to point B.
Yeah.
You know, you want to get through the game and get to the end content or the final whatever the game developer come up with. You have to solve all these puzzles to get there. So,
you know what series was very good at introducing puzzles? So we talked about Skyrim, right?
Yep.
Legend of Zelda games.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of puzzle solving in those games.
There is. Yep.
You know, I remember Breath of the Wild.
Yep.
And like moving the Switch to like rotate tables to roll balls, and then like I realized one time you could just flip the Switch upside down.
Right.
And that the ball would go like where you wanted it to go. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Right.
Why didn't I think of that earlier?
Yeah. No, it works out good.
And so it's cool to have like those outs, and like it's, you know, you could talk circles basically about how many times.
Oh yeah,
they
no,
appear.
absolutely. Puzzle. I think without puzzles or there was other words you used for the description. But puzzles,
Problem solving.
Yeah, puzzles or problem solving. You wouldn't have very many fun style games out there. I mean, sure, you got stuff like old school Gauntlet where it's not really a problem solving. I mean, technically it is. You're trying to kill as many monsters you can before you die.
Yeah.
But it's kind of a hack and slash more than a puzzle solving game.
Yeah, and maybe that's what the difference is like what's the focus of the game?
Right.
Because if the focus of the game is on solving the puzzles,
right,
then it's a puzzle
something
game.
like which we talked about, The Room.
Yep.
Probably some of the greatest actual puzzle game made. Myst is a very good one too.
So I never played Myst.
No, Myst was it was one of the first like super old. It's a super old game. It's one of the first graphical puzzle games probably ever made, and it's quite old. It was all puzzles though. It was all getting from point A to point B.
Do you remember like Walmart and the $10 games they'd sell, the point and click adventure games?
Yep.
Like there's some pretty decent puzzle solving in those ones too.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. That's why they sold.
Yeah.
That's why you find them at garage sales or rummage sales now, because the old people that bought them, that loved them, are moving on now. They're moving to Florida. And retiring, and they don't want to play their puzzle games anymore. Now they just want to do their stuff. Well, now the phone has them all, so.
Yep. Yeah, and it's funny, like, how popular just, like, even, like, you look at, like, Bejeweled or Candy Crush or something like that. I mean, ultimately, you're trying to, like, min-max by solving kind of, like, these little, basically geometric puzzles, right? Tetris is another great example.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
And it's always interesting to me how, like, puzzle games, like, where you're trying to solve a specific puzzle are extremely popular. But when you get to, like, strategy games or some bigger games where it takes all these systems of puzzles and makes an even bigger puzzle, how the amount of people kind of drop off.
Right. I'm trying to think of a really big game that has, like, I know I've played some. I just can't think of the names of them right off the top of my head. But I know, like, because we're talking about big, you know, like massive, like
chains of puzzles.
Webs
of puzzles, yeah.
I know there must be some that I've played. I just can't think of what they are right off the top of my head.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I again, like, we've talked about quite a few of them that kind of are like that.
Yep.
But it's like, it looks like a puzzle game. It smells like a puzzle game. But it's not being presented as a puzzle game.
Right, yeah, no, right, exactly. I mean, there's something to be said about a company labeling their games, which we've talked about hundreds of times. You and I personally, I know for sure, have talked about it lots. So we're on puzzle games. Are we switching? Okay. We've done the Jigsaws. We've done
tabletop RPGs.
So what's next?
I mean, I feel like we've already segued into video games.
Okay. Yep. Oh, yeah, video games. There you go. Sorry, I'm just trying to catch my brain is all over here.
Yeah, no, we've been moving pretty quick. Kind of loosely defined puzzles. I guess another one I thought that is kind of interesting to me is within the video game genre, some of the platformers had a lot of puzzles to solve in them. And a lot of times the puzzles there was like what order you had to do things.
Right.
I think of like the Metroid games.
All right, yeah.
Or stuff like Hollow Knight, maybe.
Spyro.
Spyro,
had
yeah.
a lot of puzzles. In
Tomb Raiders, stuff
Tomb
like
Raiders,
that.
yeah.
The other ones I always found interesting too was like Minesweeper.
Oh,
like I love Minesweeper. I love the heck out of that game.
I wish I could.
And that's a puzzle game.
It is, and you have to have a specific. I'm going to tell you right now, you have to have a specific analytical type of brain to do it, because I'm not very good at Minesweeper, and I have no idea why. I follow the rules, I do what it's told. I still just stumble across it constantly. Yet my wife, she just thinks differently than I do. She's got a very, I don't even want to say mechanically inclined, because I feel like I can go out and change a tire, change an alternator. I've pulled an engine, put an engine in.
Yep.
Like mechanically inclined, I think I can figure out from point A to point B. But it takes an analytical style of mine, which I'm probably not very good at. Like I'm a kick the door down type of guy. But she can sit down, and the first time, this is what I realized I hated Minesweeper. Not because, it was only because I thought I was okay at it, and then you watch somebody that's actually good at it, and you're just like, why would I even try? Like, have you ever come across something in life where you're like, I'm pretty good at this, and then someone comes by and you're like, okay, I'm an absolute beginner and I suck.
Yeah. All the time.
Minesweeper was that moment.
All the time.
That was probably my first really big humbling moment, because I've never been too like sure of things in my life. And I always thought I was okay at Minesweeper. Like I can play it, I get through it. But she sits down and I'm like, she wants to play, and we're like, this is back before we each had a computer and we each had, I'm like, oh well, here, I'll start. She's like, nah, I just go straight to the end. I'm not gonna waste my time on little stuff. I'm like, really? Oh, okay. It's gonna be hard. 15 seconds later, she's done. I'm like,
are you human? What is
how
going
the
on?
hell did you do that? That is 1,000 square, or whatever it is. The biggest one was like, it was huge. I'm like, how? She goes, well, I've gotten down to like 12 seconds before. I'm like,
Now you're just showing off.
okay, so I'm dumb. Gotcha. You know what I mean? But that's a puzzle game, and it takes a certain kind of brain to look. It's not even like the puzzle games where you have the rings that you try to untwist.
Yep.
Like my brain doesn't work that way. Like
Yeah.
I can figure it out sometimes by just getting
you
lucky.
stumble into it.
Right.
Yeah. So the brain teasers, I always love those. There's a few of them I could do blindfold, and I just
Right.
had it like memorized and figured out. And
I've been pretty unblessed with that ability.
I love those things. So another, like, back to the platformers a little
Yep.
bit. I know we're bouncing all over
Yep,
the place,
yep,
but
yep.
it's such a when you begin to realize like what could be considered a puzzle game,
Yeah.
it kind of just breaks open. I guess that's kind of what I was getting at. That's just the whole idea.
I mean, the ultimate puzzle game is hooking up all this equipment to get it going before
Yeah.
we start playing,
Yeah.
talking, right?
Yeah, you want to get meta?
That's a puzzle, man.
You want to get
That's
meta?
a puzzle,
right?
right.
Building your PC
Right.
is a puzzle.
Yeah. To get all this stuff running, that's a puzzle in its own right.
So there's a series of games. The first one I remember is Limbo. It's like a black and white side scroller,
Okay.
and it's kind of like this action platformer, but it's also got a little bit of puzzle solving because you have to do weird things. Inside is also like similar vein.
Okay.
Little Nightmares,
Oh.
kind of up there too.
Yep.
Little Nightmares 2.
Right.
But there's a bunch of these like side-scrolling games that have this like macabre, dark, ominous background sort of thing going on. And it's usually like you're trying to outrun something or travel back and forth to move on to the next areas.
Right.
And I always thought that those were really cool as far as like just delivering. It's a cool delivery system for puzzles.
Yeah. I agree. I can't argue on that one. I think puzzles are so integral to almost everything we do as far as video games go that we don't even we just talked about it. We don't realize that we're even doing puzzles most of the time. It's like you go back to Mario, even the original Mario Brothers game, and you're trying to beat Bowser in every level or whatever. You're beating a little mini boss every time you get through a certain level. And the only difference is how that boss behaves.
Yeah.
Which, does he jump forward or does he jump backwards the first time? Does he jump high or does he jump low? And does he throw a fireball the first time or the second time, or does he throw a double? Does he not throw a double? I mean, it's all puzzle solving, and it's a matter of memorizing the sequence of how things work to win.
And the beautiful thing, too, is you don't even have to analyze that. You can just kick the door down and stumble into beating Bowser by luck, chance, skill, whatever you want to chalk it up to. There's innumerable factors that just get you to the same solution.
But I think ultimately they were designed as puzzles. Like, this is how that's how people got into video games, you know. Like, we had Pong back in the day, and it was not really a puzzle. It was just a ball bouncing back and forth. It was entertaining, but there was some lackluster.
It was a speed, skill, coordination.
Then you got Pac-Man. How did that change? How did Pac-Man change? Pac-Man changed an industry almost by itself.
Pac-Man was a game that at its inception looked like a fast twitch reaction sort of thing, right?
No, it's literally a puzzle.
That's what it looked like. But then you get the guy that memorizes the patterns.
Right.
And humans are very good at finding patterns. It's almost like a freaking necessity for us or something. And that guy just breaks open the world, right?
Yeah, it's like a puzzle sitting there waiting to be solved.
And then
Someone's
you get
created
something
a puzzle.
like a game that was legitimately just a puzzle game. A game that appeared like a puzzle game, but was actually a reaction game. So like the inverse of Pac-Man is like Tetris.
Yeah, right.
You look at Tetris, you're like, that's a puzzle game, right? And then you begin to think about it.
It's just a reaction game.
It's just a reaction game.
You gotta be fast enough.
You just gotta be quick enough to rotate. Yeah.
Y'all know the long line fits in that spot. You just know it. But sometimes you put the L there.
Yeah.
Because you weren't fast enough to get it anywhere else, you know?
Or I remember learning how to like rotate pieces while they're on that tick. Like if you input during that tick before they went to the next layer, you could actually slide a piece in to where you wanted to. Crazy stuff.
Yeah.
And so that's a great example of just a reaction game that looks like a puzzle game.
Yep. That's exactly. Yep.
So it's kind of cool how like you can have these like masquerade effects almost. But yeah, I mean, this is just kind of like, I just wanted to talk about puzzle games. I like puzzle games. I like strategy and stuff.
Yeah.
So a little bit shorter episode, but
all right, fair enough.
Anything else you want to add?
No, I think I'm good.
Alrighty.
Puzzles are puzzles. I like them.
Puzzling.
That's right.